Sustainability in fuel retail is rapidly evolving beyond the traditional forecourt model, as operators respond to changing energy demands, regulatory pressures, and increased consumer expectations. While the transition to lower carbon energy sources has slowed pace, retailers are looking at other ways in which they can reduce their environmental impact and become more sustainable through digital transformation and smarter infrastructure. Cloud-based solutions reduce on-site hardware requirements and energy consumption. Digital receipts minimise paper waste, and advanced wet stock management and automatic tank gauging systems enhance fuel monitoring, prevent leaks, and reduce overall delivery emissions. In this episode with Viju Pullan, DFS Sales and Key Account Director, and Thomas Woodward, DFS Product Manager, we look at how the modern fuel retailer can embed sustainability not just in the products they sell, but in the systems and processes that power their business. Hi, thank you both for joining me today. Okay, so let's just get stuck in. Thomas, I'll come to you first. How would you define what sustainable fuel retail really means today?
Well, I think it has several factors to it in a world of increasingly, a pronounced corporate social responsibility with respect to environmental factors. I think that in terms of sustainable fuel retail, it's very important today that as we see sort of a bit of a slowdown in adoption of electric cars, that fuel retailers do what they can to transition to more environmentally sustainable fuels such as HVO fuels and biofuels, and make it so they are providing those into the marketplace to really do what they can to help reduce their environmental impact. I think there's then a plethora of ways that people can achieve sustainable fuel retail, in that, they can reduce their energy consumption within their stations, they can have more efficient, refrigeration, solar panels, etc. And I think from a sort of Dover Fuel Solution point of view, what we really think about when we think about sustainable fuel retail is around how we can help our customers reduce their environmental impact with the fuels that they carry within their stations and within their logistic lines, etc. So, for instance, our solution, DX Wetstock, really helps to ensure that our customers can find even the smallest of leaks on their sites. Mm-hmm. And that really helps contribute to their sustainable fuel retailing, because it means they can actually really stop any leaks before they become significant and really minimize their environmental impact in operating their stations. So I think that's in my view, what I think, how I define sustainable fuel retailing today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as well, I'm sorry, just to cut in there, I think it's really important when we say sustainability. I think a lot of people think that means something completely different from environmental compliance, and obviously that environmental regularity. And I think that being sustainable and focusing on those kind of environmental impacts work hand in hand together. Viju, just coming to you, how would you define sustainable fuel retail today?
No, it's very interesting, like what you said about the word sustainability in sustainable fuel retail. It's got different connotations now in the current environment. So one, definitely like what Thomas explained and the angle which you said. But all this transition has to be done from a business sustainability point of view as well, right? So these changes, because changes are there, if business has to change, there is need for it. Environmental is one of the key drivers around it. But can you introduce without business sustainability? That's a big question mark which the industry is on. So I see that the industry is clearly on a crossroad between introducing cleaner energies. This could be drop-in fuels, or it could be newer energies like EV, which is has its own ups and downs, but also customer connect to improve business, and also adopting efficient operations. So like what Thomas explained about wet stock and all that is more around the efficient operation. But if I can just chip in an example, for instance, on how do you operate your site in a sustainable manner, adding to an equipment angle to it, like for example additive dispensers. This is quite common in North America. It is quite common there as a practice, but interestingly it's also getting more attention in the European oil retailers. And very interesting is to see that the early adopters of the solution are not the large oil companies, they are the medium to small retailers and networks. And the reason being, they are quick to recognize that they can introduce newer fuels by adopting additive. They can sell premium fuels, so they can increase their margins. That means they potentially increase operational flexibility. They can optimize the space requirements. They don't have to dig and put in a new tank. Multiple such advantages. And then if you look from an operational point of view, they can negotiate in bulk on the fuel itself, standard fuel, rather than negotiating two different types of fuel. It increases their capital liquidity because now they are focused on a fast consuming fuel rather than a stocked fuel, simplify market entry of new introduction of premium fuels. Logistics can be better streamlined, just one type of tanker or lesser complexity on the depot and various other things, and also reducing evaporation loss. So this is an example of how the industry and how the retailers and early adopters are looking at how to make their site more sustainable.
Yeah.
Operation wise, increasing customer connect, and of course, finding cleaner fuels.
Yeah, of course. That actually leads quite nicely into our next question because obviously Thomas and you both touched on this. Many retailers are seeing the energy transition now as a challenge. And obviously there's the energy diversification is somewhat slowing across EMEA. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for fuel retailers when they're diverse in the energy mix? Is that still a key concern? Viju, I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay. So I mean this is definitely a challenge for the industry, and it's interesting, when there is a challenge, this is more than a century old industry. This industry innovates, right? So clearly there was a lot of upbeat energy around EV, around LNG, which is kind of tapered down. Maybe EV is still there, but in drop-in fuels, you have more attention around drop-in fuels, bio, HVO, different percentages of ethanol. So that is definitely there. Then when you start looking at diversification, kind of like what I hinted to before, I think there is a huge diversification of the fuel station becoming into a destination model. So when you say destination, it's like more focus on the retailing part, food services compared to the fuel itself. So yes, I think soon we will stop calling it as a fuel retailing station. It will become a kind of a destination network, a destination model where all kind of conveniences, including fuel, is just is available for somebody to get in and get served. So there is a lot of attention going in that space. And then if you start looking at it from an operational point of view, the technology wave is something which the industry is looking at this more rather than, fuel from a data point of view. Like when Thomas said about wet stock, you are looking at it from a data lens. So it is no longer just reordering the material. You are looking at it from a data to find where are the leaks, where I can optimize. So tremendous amount of insights are hidden in this data, which we are now capable to bring out. And Dover specializes in their different solutions around that. So it's a very interesting stage, both for the transformation of the industry and for solution providers like DFS, who can be ahead of this game.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's really important as well when we talk about these kind of hubs, isn't it? Like we're referencing them in the industry now as these mobility hubs that aren't just offering the fuel uptake, they're offering all these additional services. And there are, with that come the challenges as well as like how do you become operationally efficient, operationally sustainable. And I think that's a key consideration for retailers looking to make certain investments because they have to look at their customer base as well and what makes sense for them. Just coming to you, Thomas, on that one, where do you see the biggest opportunities for fuel retailers who are looking to diversify the energy mix?
Well, I think I would echo a lot of what Viju said around stations becoming hubs. And I think that, though there is an opportunity for them to adopt, high-speed charging infrastructure for people who have adopted electric cars, I think I'd echo what Viju says in terms of, accelerating their adoption of biofuels and HVO fuels to offer people more, diversity within the energy mix. But I do see that the main opportunity for retailers here is if people are taking longer to charge their cars up, then becoming more of a hub where people can shop and relax and there's more recreation within the station environment. There's a big opportunity there for them to profit, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think as well, it kind of touches on what you were mentioning earlier in terms of And it kind of also touches on what Viju said in terms of the data available at a fuel site and how that can help retailers and operators make more informed decisions in terms of wet stock management, monitoring their fuel stock so they can place deliveries to become more sustainable and reduce their carbon footprint. You were mentioning about refrigeration, only reordering stock that they know is going to sell rather than having something that's going to sit there all the time. So there's all these, what we would probably call sustainability touch points, that are really important for a retailer to take into consideration that don't necessarily evolve around the energy mix, especially now when that conversation is slowing down. So I think that's a really important point that you both raised. One of the other ones, Viju, that you mentioned was in terms of operational sustainability and technology.
Absolutely.
Now, often that gets less attention than the energy mix and alternative fuels. So, in your opinion, how can cloud-based solutions help retailers reduce their environmental footprint?
This is actually looking from the data lens, like what we said before. That's a total, I mean, a clear given change in the way information is being businesses are being looked into, right? So, for instance, we are talking about the station is generating so much of data. It is connecting. You are able to look into that data, work on it, and find ways to increase, for example, uptime, to optimize the utilization of your equipments. Are you over installed? Are you low? I mean, is your installation levels need to be further increased? You can, with data, knowing problems in advance, you can optimize on the energy spent to travel to site. The technician truck rolls can be reduced. Now, these kind of things really find scope in optimizing, in reducing your operational cost, and which otherwise was very, very, very generic. You didn't have a network view, and now you can look at a station, you can look at a network, you can look at segments and find these spaces for optimization. So that's really something which those cloud enabled solutions have enabled. And the right solutions, right connected ecosystem at your site which can generate this data, and then of course the capability to analyze it makes a whole lot of difference. That's on one side in terms of operational improvements. Then you look at the customer connect, then the customer generates data, all sorts of data from different sources, and you're able to bring those things together in the cloud. So it could be on the station, the fueling patterns, but it could be also the big data and outside generic data which is generated by the customer, which can be connected back into this for generating more customer satisfaction in terms of his buying patterns. And retailers, in principle, are probably absolutely on the forefront of making use of the customer data and how to capitalize on it. So when the fuel industry merges with the retailing business, I think that's really a fabulous opportunity for the fuel retailing industry today to try and improve the customer connect. The industry has to evolve. There are different ways in which it does. In North American market, you have a much wider connect into with the customer on larger screens on the dispenser while fueling and various things, and then you are able to interact, you are able to capture their loyalty, you are able to give them freebies. Europe is relatively little more conservative. There is more data protection around it, but the trend is inevitable. It's absolutely there. And maybe then I can leave it to Thomas. Probably you can touch upon the stock part and various other angles around it.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I think that I think cloud-based solutions offer, a massive opportunity for retailers to really reduce their environmental footprint in many ways, as you've alluded to. Within our own product, it's wet stock, for instance, we enable our customers to predict when they're going to run out of fuel, but to the point where the tank's low within a certain number of days, so they can then restock their fuel supplies, which minimizes their deliveries, reduces their overheads and their costs, but also naturally reduces the environmental footprint associated with that. I think furthermore, it's possible now with clouds based solutions to really get a clear network view of your range of stations, what the operations, for instance, the pump operations on individual stations and how well they're performing, what's the uptime of your different pumps within your stations and your terminals. And that's one element of what cloud can give you. But I think that on top of that, really having tools like ATGs installed, which give you real-time data, that's critical really to reducing environmental footprints, because it then means services like ours, where you have a real analyst sat at a desk looking over your data, your alarms that's coming in real time, That means you can then pinpoint leaks literally at the point of their starting, because typically a leak might start, it could be a few litres an hour that's leaking out of your tank, and over time that will grow. And then if you don't catch it sooner or later, you're going to pollute your local water supplies. So I think, cloud-based solutions coupled with real-time data are really powerful tools for reducing environmental footprints, because it enables us to catch problems before they become major problems. That obviously saves the environment, but also it reduces liability and reduces costs and risk exposure for retailers as well. So I think cloud-based solutions offer a real great opportunity to reduce environmental footprints.
Yeah, I think as well, the accessibility that comes with cloud solutions as well means that you can react in a timely manner. You're not having to wait 24, 48 hours, for example. It's that accessibility to your site and your site solutions 24/7, which, although not sustainability focused, it also gives you that peace of mind, gives retailers that assurance that if something was to go wrong or they needed to make a decision, they could do that almost in real time, to your point, Thomas.
Yeah, Sarah, maybe I will give you a very nice example here on this question, because when you talk about operational sustainability and data, one of the very interesting things is, let's say a lot of stations have invested very heavily into EV chargers. Today, we know that's a reality, right? Now, the EV charging ecosystem, how to pay for it, how to start the charging, etc., was heavily dependent on independent CPO model, which had nothing to do with the site. So the dispenser is physically sitting on the site, it's occupying space, but the retailer has no control. And the industry, and it's a well-known fact in the industry that the uptime of these equipments are relatively low, or in the other way around, the customer's satisfaction level when they go to charge their equipment, their car, +% cases, they are not able to do it.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, DFS has introduced a solution like DX Power, where you're able to connect with these EV chargers and your site systems. So your equipment, like an EV charger, becomes an extension of your dispenser. So the customer could go in the shop, do its NFR purchases, utilize the retailer benefits from that time of the customer spend in the shop. It can pay in the shop, it can pay by cash, it can pay by card, and not just dependent on the CPO. So, and all this is possible because of the cloud connectivity between the CPO and the EV and the DX Power, etc., those kind of solutions. So it's a very, very interesting state we are in, where we can even potentially improve the existing infrastructure and optimize its operations and cost.
Yeah. And again, I think it's just important. It kind of reinforces that sustainability and accessibility when it comes to cloud solutions kind of work hand in hand. It gives retailers and operators that complete view of their site infrastructure to make better and more informed decisions that can help with that sustainability aspect in terms of reducing carbon footprint, reducing accessibility to certain equipment or tools, but also just allowing them to have that data connect that we were talking about earlier and that we touched on. So it's incredibly important. Just moving on, one of the other aspects that has become more popular in recent years would be digital receipts. It might seem like a very small and somewhat incremental change, but how significant are they in reducing waste and modernising customer engagement? Viju, I'll come to you first.
You're right. I mean, in mentioning it's a small change, but it's got a pretty massive ripple effect impact. I mean, digital receipts, it's more or less like a trend, like the youngsters, and let's say it's a new trend where almost all of us seamlessly have adopted to it. Frankly, at the onset, if I may say that I'm pretty encouraged about it, because there are some countries and certain customers who are looking at rolling out their outdoor payment terminals without a printer, totally without a printer. So it is something which really shows a very good understanding of the evolution of customer expectations. It shows an eye onto the technology, and very importantly, these customers, when they are investing, these are long-term investments. They are looking at reduced OPEX, right? And when we're talking about, it's not just reducing. Of course, it reduces waste, because literally kilometers of paper, which is non-recyclable thermal paper with chemical coating, which is reduced, really kilometers and kilometers of it per site.
Yep.
is reduced. So that is already an environmental benefit, and it's also a cost benefit. But then you associate with it like the going to site, replacing those papers, various
Yeah.
other things are the fuel cost and the carbon footprint around it. These are reduced. Then the other positive side of it is on the sales side, you are now creating a digital connect with the customer.
Yeah.
You're allowing the customer to be feeling it more personalized. It is paperless. Customer feels involved in the environmental friendly behavior. And very, very interestingly, the receipt itself is now available to the customer in a very convenient format
Yeah.
when the customer wants it, right? This makes a big difference of adding convenience. And this is what the industry is really, really looking at. So it's a small change, but has a pretty interesting ripple effect across various other facets.
Yeah.
I was reading the other day that I think not just by it doesn't just add to the customer convenience as well. I think that the studies that have shown that when a customer receives a marketing email based off the back of a receipt they got from somewhere, they're actually 4 times more likely to open that email because of their pre-engagement with the receipt as opposed to your average marketing email that you send out. So I think they actually have a very compelling customer engagement effect as well for
Yes.
shop customers. So
Yeah, I think it's really important as well because the majority of the world now does everything on their phone. They pay via their phone, they communicate via their phone, they're on it for updates. The fact that you then can get a digital receipt to said phone is something that you constantly have with you, more so than a wallet these days or a purse, for example. It adds into that connected convenience. And I think as well, in a world of business travel, expenses are very prevalent in today's society, and a lot of paper receipts can be lost, damaged. To have a digital receipt, it just adds that additional element of convenience. And to your point, Thomas, that engagement level, if they're getting something that they want, that they don't have to do anything extra with, the chance of them either going back to that site or engaging with that site for further services or the brand in general does exponentially increase. And I think that's for something that might seem like a very small bit of paper that we probably wouldn't think to give it 2 seconds thought, it can make a huge impact sustainable wise and in terms of meeting those consumer expectations as well, which as we all know is incredibly important today in a highly saturated market like fuel retail. Thomas, just coming to you, moving on to wet stock management and automatic tank gauges. So these are, and we've touched on this, they're typically viewed as compliance tools. So how can they contribute to sustainability and emissions reductions on a site?
Well, I think in a vast number of ways. I mean, I think they've gone from being compliance tools to being so much more in terms of what they can offer with respect to sustainability and emission reduction. So typically, I think wet stock and tank gauges, they go hand in hand. Modern tank gauges, I think they can detect, leaks as small as, I think it's 0.4. They measure, detect leaks as small as 0.4 litres per hour. They have micron level accuracy built within them. So they're actually exceptionally sensitive and able to, spot the smallest changes in terms of volume of fuel. With respect to their ability to contribute to sustainability, I think that with these modern tools that are super accurate, we're far better able than we ever were in the past to understand what's happening below the surface of the ground at a petrol station and see what's going on within the tank and understand, okay, well, what is happening? Is it temperature that's affecting a change? Is it there's actually a small leak that's begun? And this, I think, takes us beyond compliance because I think we've seen with some of our bigger customers that the adoption of these tools isn't just about compliance anymore. It's, if you're a significantly large fuel retailer and you have a significant spill, there's the reputational damage that's associated with that. So it's not about compliance anymore. It's about, well, I actually don't want a big leak because I will look bad and then I will not just have fines, but public perception of my company will be damaging to me. You have the sustainability side, but also I think the corporate social responsibility side, they're very effective in helping to reduce risk for large companies and make that contribution to them as well and give them that stability.
Yeah. And I think today, because there are so many different technologies and solutions that you can implement on a fuel site, in the kind of environmentally conscious world that we live in now, there should be no reason for certain leaks like this to happen. We're in a society where they have all of these tools readily available to us. Therefore, for the environmentally conscious consumer, sites that have all of these solutions and technologies in place kind of builds that consumer trust, I would say, just to your point, because a leak or a large leak can have massive reputational damage. One that hits headlines, news outlets, everything. However, if sites are constantly on the kind of real-time benefit of these solutions, it builds that customer trust. Like, this site, this brand is taking care of what they are providing to the wider consumer. And I think it's very important. It's an important takeaway from that as well. Viju, just coming to you, how do you think Wetstock and ATG can contribute to sustainable?
I mean, a lot covered by Thomas very well. I mean, in simple terms, if I put it, like, you cannot manage what you cannot measure, and preferably remotely and in real time. Because doing everything on site, you're creating a lot of dependency on the skill levels of each site and consistency across sites. When you're able to do things remotely, when you're able to do things in real time, you are able to apply consistency in the way the data is looked into, what you're looking into, what you want out of that data. You're able to extract that, and it is much more efficient having the skill sets and expertise applied on that data from one central location. Consistency is important. And then this could be on the stock data, how you interpret it. It could be about equipment malfunctioning. It is about managing uptime, about refixing it, but also about things like managing the fuel delivery routes. What are the best way to deliver, which is most efficient, reducing the corresponding carbon footprint on the supply chain and related areas. So I mean, it's a given. I mean, if you want your business to be sustainable, if your business to be efficient, that's the way to go now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I definitely think it's a topic of conversation for many retailers and operators right now as well.
One thing we've seen internationally is that we have markets which are quite compliance heavy, like the UK and Spain, but there are other markets out there, like, more based in Africa, for instance, where they may not have a legal compliance requirement to have real-time tank monitoring, but the companies there are actually uptaking these tools simply to reduce their risk. And I think there is ultimately down the line, it's not really talked about that much, but the cost benefit analysis of it is actually also quite significant over time as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's another one, isn't it? It's like you want to be actively sustainable, but it's also in terms of like that cost efficiency as well for many retailers, particularly if in a region where there isn't that environmental or legal compliance requirements or legislation, but the fact that they're doing it anyway because they can see the benefit of it for their business is a huge positive. We've kind of touched on the importance of data visibility before in driving both environmental performance and operational efficiency, but how important is the visibility of data?
I think it is absolutely critical, because I think, as Viju said before, if you can't, if you don't have the data, you can't measure what's going on. Within our ecosystem, we can measure, if pumps are out of use, if tanks are being refilled, if data is actually flowing around the system as well. So I think it's critical to have data visibility to run an effective operation and ensure that you don't have stock outs in terms of stock, ensuring you don't have overfills, for instance, which happens often on petrol station forecourts. For instance, we have real-time APIs that you can call to then understand, well, is there stock in the tank before the haulier fills up the tank? Those sort of things, it all adds to improving performance and efficiency across the network.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, we've touched on it, I think, Viju, you had mentioned it before, that connectivity element and that digitalization across the entire site. It's not that everything just works in a silo, I think, is also incredibly important when we talk about data visibility. So we've kind of touched on the various ways in which retailers and operators can become more sustainable, but what are some of the common barriers retailers face when implementing sustainable technologies, and how can they overcome them? Viju, I'll come back to you.
I mean, interestingly, I mean, it's an evolving technology, evolving ways of working, and all those things. So there are a lot of barriers which we have to overcome, and primarily, I think at this stage, what we are facing, the industry is facing, is the high upfront capex of new technology, of change.
Yeah.
How can one overcome this? Take it from the point of view that, if the solution has got the capability to upgrade in a modular manner, which is something which DFS very often focuses on its solution, try to ensure that there is cross usage of the different modules on a site. It is something which is very credible, very useful. The solution, when you select on a fuel station, it's better to be which can be implemented in a modular manner. Then when we typically look at a solution, like for instance, like a wet stock or something, we have different ways, for instance, of collecting the data, which is irrespective of the technology or the equipment at site. So that is a way to overcome it. But yes, as long as the technology provided by the solution provider, normally if they are competent, they will be able to focus on how to overcome that barrier. But yes, cost is still a factor. Modularity of the solution probably is the best way to go about it. If you look at other angles, one is about the equipment itself, but then with the changing technology, you as an oil company need a lot of increase in overheads on managing that change in terms of technical expertise. So this is a very big cost, because you need to upskill your existing people, existing manpower, or change them, and that transformation is quite challenging for a industry which has been traditional, working for many years the way it was. So changing the people becomes, and their skill sets becomes so important to ensure that the change in technology implemented is effective, the right selections are made. So this is a very important and significant challenge faced by the industry. One way of dealing with that is potentially picking a partner for the solution who can seamlessly bring across or have the technical expertise, have the know-how, which are rich, and they can bring solutions which are rich, function rich, future-proof, and then there is a guided pathway to move forward, even for the in-house technical team. And there is a collaborative way of working there, right? So I think it's a very interesting times where the retailer, the network, the oil company, and the solution provider, which are robust and well equipped, can co-work to script a path forward in this direction to overcome these barriers.
Yeah. No, I think that was some valuable insight, so thank you very much for sharing that. Thomas, anything additional that you would like to share in terms of common barriers?
I think Viju is totally right in terms of the high upfront capital expenditure being a real barrier to adopting new technologies. And I think that cost-benefit analysis is often quite challenging to make, because especially when we live in a time where there's so many different technologies that are evolving all in parallel, the risk is, well, what if you invest in the wrong one? And that's always a challenge. I just add maybe that one way of mitigating some of that risk is it's more applicable to cloud-based solutions as opposed to more physical forecourt equipment. But you can actually do trials first to ensure that you have the value is there before investing. So, for instance, we've done trials in the past where we've run a trial of 5 sites for a customer for over 3 months with our analyst team, and then we show a real return on investment in terms of, these were the leaks we found across your stations, these are the pumps that are commonly out of use, these are the times you stocked out in the last few months, this is the cost that had to you in terms of sales. So I think that as far as software goes, at least, there's an opportunity to try before you buy a little bit more than perhaps there is in terms of the large capital expenditure pieces.
Yeah, and I think that again ties back into that insight, isn't it, and that visibility that they can have that they maybe didn't previously have, and allow them to make a more informed decision. So looking ahead, what innovations or trends do you believe will have the biggest impact on making fuel retail more sustainable over the next 5 to 10 years? Thomas, I'll come to you first.
Risk of sounding kind of cliche, I do believe that there is a big role for, in terms of the cloud-based solutions anyway, implementing machine learning and AI within these systems, I think will make a very big difference in the coming years. So we already have it in our system today. For instance, we have machine learning that helps us to pinpoint, the beginnings of leaks within systems. And I think over time, AI will play a bigger role in terms of that as well, in terms of the more large language model based systems, but also in terms of the user experience. You'll see that we'll be letting people know you'll have an AI assistant that then says to you, oh, by the way, this station's about to run out of fuel in case you didn't notice, instead of just having something pop up on a dashboard somewhere that doesn't really force you to engage with it. So I think those sort of things will, could contribute quite significantly to sustainability. And then that then ties into things like, logistics and fuel delivery and people being smart in terms of the telemetry that they're utilizing for those to ensure they don't ever stock out and those kind of things. So I think the kind of machine learning and AI field will definitely play a role in improving sustainability over the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely a hot topic right now, isn't it, given all of the investment and news headlines that it is hitting. So I think, to your point, it's only inevitable that it reaches every aspect of our daily life, and why not how we manage our fuel sites as well. Viju, just coming to you with the same question.
Indeed, I think AI is going to have a huge impact. In fact, what's most interesting is we have been collecting data and we have been constantly improving on how to collect the data. How to generate output of that data is really going to look significant, going to take a significant incremental jump with AI. In wet stock, of course, but managing stock and logistics and those kind of areas, of course, but also when it comes to the remote management of the equipment, data and predictive maintenance and those kind of areas. I also feel that there is going to be a much closer integrated data-driven operation between the forecourt and retailing. Different markets are at different speed of trying to integrate these two things, but with the retailing getting more and more importance, the forecourt activities will get more closely integrated with how a customer is looked into, what is the profiling of the customer and various other things, and how to enhance that per ticket size of the customer, how to target that customer in a better way. So there would be a more integrated outlook towards the customer, both merging the forecourt and retailing habits. On the fuel side, all this we should probably be seeing more or less in a short term, and I say less than 5-year horizon. Or even on the fuel side, we should see more of HVOs, biofuels, drop-in fuels, which are going to be more and more increasingly adopted. On the hydraulic side, etc., the adaptability of those things, regulatory minor changes around it, which will be probably bring in environmental benefits. So that's something on a short term. On a more wider term, we could see other things, but probably like LNG could come back depending on what the pricing range of LNG is. Hydrogen for heavy vehicles could possibly find its space in. There could be a scenario around the circular economy where microgrids generate solar energy, feeds back into the battery, depending on how the EV industry moves in. But that's more on the long-term horizon. Maybe we are more focused on, let's say, a 5-year lower than that, a short-term view.
Yeah. And I think some of the important takeaways that we can have from this episode is that sustainability is not a one-size-fits-all situation. There are different ways in which retailers can implement sustainable practices, whether that be through the fuels and energy diversification on a site, or whether it be through their cloud solutions to provide that real-time visibility to make more informed decisions in terms of reordering stocks to reduce their carbon footprint, or it could be as incremental as updating their systems to digital receipts. And I think that's a really important message for retailers or for anyone who's listening to this episode, is that sustainability does not have to be large-scale investment. It can be modular, to your point, Viju, and it can be based on a try before you buy situation. Tom, to your point as well. Thank you both for joining me today and for your insights. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability in Fuel Retail. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Viju and Thomas. If you'd like to support the podcast, feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a review. To catch the latest from Dover Fueling Solutions, you can follow us on LinkedIn or visit our website at www.doverfuelingsolutions.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next month where we continue to fuel the conversation.